There are many similar videos with tips on how to keep your grapes fresh for a long time, but after just 1 week we see similar results. That's why in this video I'll show you how to keep grapes fresh for a long time right where they belong, on the vine. Grapes can last a very long time on the vine, and when we pick them, that's when they taste the best. But there are many pests that quickly ruin the grape harvest. First and foremost are the birds that peck at the berries. The second pest is wasps, which literally start sucking the juice. Also, many ants climb onto these grapes, feeding on the delicious juice of this cardinal variety. And not least the grape moths, which, as I showed you in one of the previous videos, their caterpillars start feeding on the berries, leading a hidden lifestyle, and the grapes become a quick target for gray mold. That's why in the video I'll show you one of the methods to preserve your grapes until late autumn, even until the beginning of winter, directly on the vines. I'll use these nets, but before placing them I need to clean the grapes of all the berries damaged by pests, because otherwise they will spoil very quickly inside the nets. I also removed these leaves that have literally intertwined with the grapes. And of course, this can be done at a much earlier stage to avoid so much damage. The reason I didn't do it earlier is that the nets were delayed quite a bit. First, some arrived that were too small and the grapes didn't fit in them. Then I made a second order. And that's why now I have to remove quite a few spoiled berries. I'm starting to put on the nets. Like this. And then this is how you wrap it. These nets also have another property. They protect the grapes from sunburn, because as I've shown you in previous videos, if we expose the grape leaves too early, they start to get sunburned. And these nets protect them. When we want to keep the grapes on the vines for longer storage, after we've already placed the protective nets, after a certain time we need to remove them to check. The entire bunch for rotten berries, and if there are any, we need to remove them with scissors, not with hands, because the juice sticks to the hands and starts. And then it sticks to the healthy berries. We need to remove them with scissors. And then cover them again with the protective nets. Here is this vine with the protective nets. These nets are more suitable for late placement before the frosts start to fall. But on the other hand, they are perfect against sunburn. There are these softer nets. In them, the grapes breathe better and don't get wet, while these get very wet from the rain. But when I placed them, I hadn't ordered the others yet, so I used these. Well, now I'll show you to what extent they've succeeded. Here, take a look. Look at how many berries are on this bunch. Rotten. These nets also protect against the last generations of grape moths, but also from ants, as well as earwigs and praying mantises, which also damage the berries, and then gray mold starts. I take a net, clean the grapes, and then cover them again. Unlike the cardinal variety, which is early and was attacked by birds very early, the Bulgar variety is much later and I still have no bird attacks on it. That's why it's extremely important to look in the clusters to see if there is any moth infestation. And if you have berries that have started to rot because of the moth, remove them carefully and only then put the bags on. At the end of November, there were already quite a few frosts and the leaves of many grape varieties fell. For me, only the labs of the Sauvignon Blanc variety are still holding on. Here are the other varieties. Also, the cardinal variety vine has no leaves on the very one on which I demonstrated how to preserve your grapes for a longer time. But now I want to tell you something extremely important that I missed at the beginning of the video. The choice of variety is extremely important because many grape varieties lose their taste qualities when they stay on the vine and start to overripe. I also want to show you something else, that these nets turned out to be not so suitable. This is the cardinal variety, which is an extremely early variety, and although it has been preserved quite well, it is still edible but not particularly pleasant in taste. These nets turned out to steam the grapes quite a bit. That's why I'll show you the other option I started using at the end of the season, especially for late and dessert grape varieties. These nets are a much better option. Look at how the grapes breathe. Of course, the variety is much later, but I want to show you not a single spoiled berry. Completely fresh and great tasting. The variety is called Black Diamond. As I already told you, at the end of November, almost approaching December, and this variety has retained its great taste qualities precisely thanks to these nets. Because Besides the birds that start attacking the grapes, especially after the vines are defoliated and visible from afar, there are also many pests that damage the berries. Of course, perhaps the most unpleasant enemy of the grapes are the grape moths, whose larvae lead such a hidden lifestyle that by the time we realize it, many of the berries have already started to rot. In the core, because it doesn't damage the outer berries, it starts damaging the grapes from the inside. Now I'll show you another grape variety. This is the Bogar variety. Here it is. Great appearance. And still a great taste, despite the few nights we had with below freezing temperatures. So I put it back in the nets. When you keep the grapes on the vines this way, they retain their freshness and taste for a long time, but with prolonged cold, the risk of freezing is high, and that's why they quickly start to spoil. Meanwhile, I tested all the methods I found for storing grapes at home during the winter. Most of them, to say the least, were disappointing, but one of the methods I really liked because it keeps the grapes fresh, picked in crates for a long time, and in the next video I'll show it to you.